Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Coachman. My name is Omar Darnoy II. Thank you for joining us. And today we're gonna still stay in the late 1800s, but we're gonna be shooting a little bit over to the small island of Great Britain. But we're gonna go even further, and we're gonna go way up north to Ireland. And this story is by good old Mr. Oscar Wilde, and it's called The Selfish Giant. And in this piece, it pretty much takes a look at uh, something that I think it's still relevant today, but it's a story about greed, loneliness, community, and how love has the power to crack like even the coldest heart. So let's get into this, and also just remember, like this isn't. I would say with it being in Irish, it's more. This is more like a fairy tale as well. So you're gonna you might hear like lofty this and lofty that, but still the message is ever so present. So here we go with The Selfish Giant by Oscar Wilde. Every afternoon, as they were coming from school, the children used to go and play in the giant's garden. It was a large, lovely garden with soft green grass, and here and there, over the grass, stood beautiful flowers like stars. And there were 12 peach trees that in the springtime broke out into delicate blossoms of pink and pearl. And then the autumn bore rich fruit. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. How happy we are, they cried to each other. One day, the giant came back. He had been to visit his friends, the Cornish ogre, and had stayed with him for 7 years. After the 7 years were over, he had said all that he had to say, for his conversation was limited, and he didn't determine to return to his own castle. When he arrived, he saw the children playing in the garden. "What are you doing here?" he cried in a very gruff voice, and the children ran away. "My own garden is my own garden," said the giant, "and one can understand that, and I will allow nobody to play in it but myself. Seems kind of greedy. It's just a garden." So he built a high wall all around it and put up a notice board. "Trespassers will be prosecuted." He was a very selfish giant. The poor children had now nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones, and they did not like it. They used to wander around the high wall when their lessons were over and talk about the beautiful garden inside. How happy we were there, they all said to each other. Then the spring came, and all over the country there were little blossoms and little birds. Only in the garden of the selfish giant it was still winter. The birds did not care to sing. To sing in it, to sing in it, as there were no children, and the trees forgot to blossom. Once the beautiful flower put its head out from the grass, but when it saw the notice board, it was so sorry for the children that it slapped back into the ground again and went off to sleep. I must say, you know that's cold when a flower says, "Fuck this, I'm out." The only people who were pleased were the snow and the frost. "Spring has forgotten this garden," they cried. "So we will live here all year round." I'm not gonna lie. So I'm a snowboard instructor, and honestly, I do know people that they love all year round, like going from the northern hemisphere to southern hemisphere and back and forth. Could I do it? Yeah, maybe like 2 years max. After that, nah. Brother's got to see some change in the seasons, so I'm sure it's in the greatest. The snow covered up the grass with her great white cloak, and the frost painted all the trees silvers. Then they invited the north wind to stay with them, and he came. He was wrapped in furs, and he roared all day about the garden and blew the chimney post down. "This is a delightful spot," he said. We must ask the hail on a visit." So the hail came, Every day for 3 hours, he rattled on the roof of the castle till he broke most of the slates, and then he ran around and round the garden as fast as he could. He was dressed in gray, and his breath was like ice. To be honest, that reminds me of home in Pennsylvania during winter, and it sounds awful. I cannot understand why the spring is so late in coming, said the selfish giant, as he sat at the window and looked out at his cold white garden. I hope there will be a change in the weather. But the spring never came, nor the summer, nor the autumn gave golden fruit to every garden. But to the giant's garden she gave none. He is so selfish, she said. So it was always winter, and the north wind, and the hail, and the frost, and the snow danced about through the trees. One morning the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king's musician passing by. It was really only a little linnet singing outside his window. But it was so long since he had heard a bird sing in his garden that it seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. Then the hail stopped dancing over his head, and the north wind ceased roaring, and a delicious perfume came into him through the open casement. I believe the spring has come at last, said the giant, and he jumped out of bed and looked out. What did he see? He saw a most wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall the children had crept in, and they were singing in the branches of trees. In every tree that he could see there was a little child, and the trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossoms, and were waving their arms gently above the children's heads. The birds were flying about and twittering in delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all around it, crying bitterly. The poor tree was still quite covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. Climb up, little boy, said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could, but the boy was too tiny. And the giant's heart melted as he looked out. How selfish I have been, he said. Now I know why the spring wouldn't come here. I will put the poor little boy on the top of the tree, and then I will knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground forever and ever. He was really very sorry for what he had done. So he should, little selfish bastard. So he crept downstairs and opened the front door quite softly, and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they all ran away, and the garden became winter again. I ain't gonna lie, I know people like this where they just come in and it's just like, yo, instant, like almost instant sadness. Sucks. Yo, honestly, you know what? Emotional leeches. There you go. That's what they are. And they're horrible. I can't stand them. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giant coming. And the giant stole up behind him and took him gently in his arms and put him up in the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossoms, and the birds came and sang on it. And the little boy stretched out his 2 arms and flung them around the giant's neck and kissed him. And the other children, when they saw the giant was not wicked any longer, came running back, and with them came the spring. It is your garden now, little children, said the giant. And he took a great axe and knocked down the wall. And when the people were going to market at 12 o'clock, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. But where is your little companion? He said. The boy I put into the tree? The giant loved him. The giant loved him the best because he had kissed him. We don't know, answered the children. He has gone away. You must tell him to be sure and come tomorrow, said the giant. But the children said that they did not know where he lived and had never seen him before. And the giant felt very sad. See? That's what happens, man. Karma's a bitch. Every afternoon when the school was over, the children came and played with the giant. But the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. The giant was very kind to all the children, yet he longed for his first little friend, and often spoke of him. How I often liked to see him, he used to say. Years went over, and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play about any more, so he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games and admired his garden. I have many beautiful flowers, he said, but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all. One winter morning he looked out of his window and he as he was dressing. He did not hate the winter now, for he knew it was merely the spring asleep, and that the flowers were resting. Suddenly he rubbed his eyes in wonder, and looked, and looked. It certainly was a marvelous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered with lovely white blossoms. Its branches were all golden, and silver fruit hung down from them, and underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy and out into the garden. He hastened across the grass and came near to the child. And when he came quite close, his face grew red with anger, and he said, "Who hath dared to wound thee?" For on the palms of the child's hands were the prints of two nails, and the prints of two nails were on the little feet. "Who dare to wound thee?" cried the giant. "Tell me, that I may take my sword and slay him." "Nay," answered the child, "but these are wounds of love." "Who art thou?" said the giant, and a strange awe fell on him, and he knelt before the little child. And the child smiled on the giant and said to him, "You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." And when the children ran in that afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossoms. Well, I gotta say, honestly, it's kind of weird because as I was reading the story, one, I think I've already read it before, but it don't matter. But two, that could be like a perfect analogy for a lot of people in relationships, to be quite honest. Um, People that just they have all these beautiful things but like they just wanna it's like it's all me, 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 me. And then they get something that they care about and guess what? They lose it because it's just like, I'm out. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I would say, you know what? Honestly, you tell me, you know what I mean? Like, kind of like how you felt about the story. I do think that in the end, um, that, the kids saying no, these are, prints of like love. Like, you can tell that obviously the kid was probably an angel and all that kind of stuff and passed away. But I think I think, in my opinion, that like this is a great story because it does display like what selfishness and like how that can lead to like this incredible amount of like loneliness, and then we never realize like what it is that we lost until it's like gone. So I mean, I definitely think that hey, it's one of those things where I think that people just need to remember that like, yo, man, sharing is caring. Like you got to give to get, and that's the only way that it works. You know what I mean? So I definitely, like I said, like this story is definitely it. I think it remind like for me, I think it should remind us that closing ourselves off to like life in general Um, and that like kind of like shutting people off, it freezes us, but yet letting people in, it just warms us up. You know what I mean? And you can find that sense of peace. But I think, like I said, I think with like technology and just like, social media and everything, everybody kind of now is about, it's about control. And I'm like, look, as much as you want to control life and everything like that, like, you know what, you just gotta let yourself go. You know what I mean? Give to receive. Like that's how this everything goes. So let me know what you think about it. Hopefully you love this story. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself. And until next time, take care.